Coffee where you are.
And I'm usually Stanley Nyaringita. It's a Biashara Tuesday, so welcome for a terrific Tuesday from right now, 6 a.m. all the way to 10 a.m. Fully packed show just for you.
Yes, and there is definitely some excitement this morning. Hellen Obiri, Kenya's Hellen Obiri, yesterday won the Boston Marathon title.
Oh, yes.
This is a back-to-back title. She won the last Boston Marathon. Now she becomes the only second woman to do this, back-to-back wins at the Boston Marathon. The last time it happened was 19 years ago.
Do you give her a 2 factorial?
Which one is that now?
Or a 3 factorial?
Okay. I'll allow you to lead that one.
So you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. Okay?
Aye. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Congratulations, Hellen Obiri. And that's how we kick off this edition of Morning Cafe.
Oh, yes. To the headlines.
Yes, a quick look at the headlines this morning. And we do have Taifa Leo. Well, we start with the Daily Nation. Let's start off with the Daily Nation, yes?
Yes.
And on the Daily Nation, why Atwoli is under siege is a big headline on the Daily Nation today. The Kotu boss is on the crosshairs and is being criticized for a number of things, and that is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation this morning.
And they're asking, cornered, right?
Is he under Siege? Those people pronounce it as Siege.
To the Standard now, united by fear factor.
Who's United? Okay. United this one's not the other Manchester United.
Not Manchester United,
suffering.
Yes.
Once again, also the photo of Hellen Obiri there yesterday as she won at the 127th edition of the Boston Marathon. But the big headline, united by
fear factor.
It's politics.
Kwenye gazeti la Taifa Leo, karata fiche ya ma-DVD.
I think habari kuu pale, lakini ya muhimu zaidi, nyani wateka ploti, waiba, kucharaza na kutimua wapangaji. Kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo, nyani pale wamezua sintofahamu sehemu fulani. Tutaangazia zaidi masuala yaliyo kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo baadaye. On the Business Daily, big firms buying Kenya's carbon credits revealed. Yes, that whole debate about carbon credits, and Netflix is one of them.
Wow, yeah.
If you
Delta
know,
is also.
These are some of these companies that actually survive.
Interesting.
Matters business.
Should be one of the businesses that we can engage in.
It should probably. Kenyans need to understand this kind of business a little bit more. Yes, carbon credits featuring on the front page of the Business Daily. Now,
no more pay rise.
The big one on the People Daily. No more pay rise.
No more.
Yes, this is what is going to affect the public sector. The national wage bill conversation still going on at the Bomas of Kenya. Today is day 2. And from day 1, this is what is coming out. No more pay rise for civil servants. It's not very good news for so many of them.
Oh, yes.
Yes. All right.
On the Star, Ruto tough choices start to bear fruit. And they say matters tightening the belt and lowers cost of living. They just have quite a number of items there. We'll be getting to that just to see also when you're discussing the wage bill and how this also affects the common mwananchi. Oh, yeah. Yes. And
the Star has been very fair on the president. It's almost more or less like a scorecard of what he has managed to do. You rarely get to see this any other daily because this is basically just singing the praises of the president and saying what he's been able to do so far.
But it makes sense. Today's on a Tuesday. The paper has the government's copy, so more or less, they really had to.
Fair to them. It's not always about criticizing the government. Once in a while, you say, okay, fine.
Yes.
You know, the media has always been accused of not doing this. But the Star has done it. And well, give it to them.
On to Ugandan papers. Daily Monitor, red eye cases rise to 7,500 in 3 weeks. This was big news that started in Tanzania, crossed over to Kenya, had a held silence in the country, and then jumped into Uganda.
And as always, matters health, making the front page in Uganda. In Kenya, this would rarely make it to the front page. But hey, that's the big news on the front page of the Daily Monitor. The other one is Dr. Martin Jerome Okek Aliker to get an official burial. And this is a renowned entrepreneur in Uganda who passed on recently. And this is a declaration by the President, Yoweri Museveni, that he will be accorded an official burial. Still in Uganda, top earners to pay 58% pay. Kenyans, even as you complain, it can never get here. 58% pay.
Wow.
Remember last time we were talking about pay in Kenya, and it was bumped up to 35% for earners above $500,000 shillings.
Yes.
Now, 58%, you can imagine more than 50% of your earnings going straight to the revenue collector.
But taking a look at the currency in dollars, isn't it sort of relative to what? If we had the same currency, will it have been 58%?
It is still 58%. It is more than half of your salary. Whichever currency, even if they are being paid in dollars, 58% to go straight to the government. You can imagine that, surely. That must be painful. But then again, it's just a proposal. It is in the new tax amendment bills. And if they are approved, this is how it will change. So even Kenyans, as you complain about matters pay and taxation, well, it can actually get worse.
So you can imagine 58% plus other. Now imagine if they had the shift, if they had others, housing levy, it will easily jump to about 70%.
70% of your salary going to the government.
Oh my goodness.
That's how bad it can get. But then there's something else you shouldn't miss. Kenyans are making forays into Uganda. And there's somewhere here on the side, suspected Kenyan land grabbers.
Wow.
In Bulambuli, historian on page 28. And Kenyans, and I remember Kipruto Rapkirwa, one of the panelists yesterday, saying that Kenyans, whenever they go anywhere, right now, you just display your passport and guys get concerned. This is a kind of behavior that makes people concerned. Suspected Kenyan land grabbers invade Bulambuli, that's in Uganda. And a photo there of the President Yoweri Museveni with other regional leaders, including a former Tanzanian President Jakaya Kikwete, discussing matters East African integration. Across the border in Tanzania, this is a big headline on the Mwananchi.
Matters
yenye tamu chungu.
Yes. Masuala ya transport.
Masuala ya usafirishaji hapa kando. Kuna mambo ya ATC. Air Tanzania. Na kuna masuala ya SGR. So masuala ya usafiri kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Mwananchi kule Tanzania.
And on the Citizen, CAG reveals more details, entities of our explanations, and still on matters the infrastructure, making a huge, big story. I always love how Tanzania focuses also on their tourism.
Yes.
Kenya, you'd see matters tourism reflected on days that you'd really expect a huge number of international tourists, days like Easter, and mostly now getting into the Christmas season. But Tanzania, it's in April, but they'd still tell you we're still expecting tourists. Oh yes.
So tourism and transport, still big stories, big news in Tanzania this morning. Those are the headlines. We'll be looking at them.
There's also, I believe, a Rwandan paper.
Oh, do we have that one?
You can go back to and take a look at the Chrome page on the same.
I don't have it here. Probably. All right. Yes, we do have the New Times.
On the other. There you have
Rwanda.
it. Yeah, they have
Rugezi wetland, crane habitat and a threat from grass cutting. Matters the environment. Rugezi is one of the BirdLife International's 7 key areas for endangered bird species. So matters the environment and conservation, making it to the front page of the New Times.
I can also see Kwibuka is on the top scroll of that paper.
Oh yes, they're still marking 30 years since the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. And you can see that belt on the top strip of the New Times. And a photo there of President Paul Kagame commissioning officer cadets. He commissioned over 600 officer cadets yesterday. Those are the big stories in across the region today. And let's take a look at the traffic real quick. The traffic in Nairobi and all the major tributaries into town as at 12 minutes past 6, looking clear. We start off with Thika Road, which is one of the major tributaries into town. And let's go as far back as probably Githurai. Yes, Kahawa Sukari, all the way past Kahawa Ndani stage, past Githurai, past Roysambu, and it's all green, all the way, even past the Garden City area where we saw a bit of a snarl up yesterday. This time round, it's a bit clear. Nothing much to report there. And it continues all the way down past the Outer Ring Road interchange at Allsops, all the way down past KCA University, past Utalii, the Utalii Drift, past the Mathari Mental Hospital, and into that Pangani interchange. And so far, nothing to report about. Even the Muthaiga Square is okay. But yes, a bit of a snarl up just immediately after the Muthaiga Square. You can see a bit of red, and this is to be expected every morning because this is where we get the bottleneck. Traffic from Kiambu Road and traffic from Thika Road, they converge here just before you get to the Pangani interchange, and a bit of a snarl up there. Hence the color yellow and red there, but I'm sure police are on standby to actually take care of that. Take a look at Kiambu Road as well. At Kiambu Road, as far back as probably, let's go as far back as Ndigwa. And from Ndigwa, nothing to report all the way to the Four Ways Junction, past the bypass, past the Ridgeways Baptist and Ridgeways Mall. Everything is clear so far. Even along the Karura Forest DCI gate, nothing to report about there. A bit of a slowdown. There's a bump just immediately after the DCI headquarters there, but nothing to worry about. All the way into the Muthaiga Square interchange and onto the Pangani interchange as well. Everything so far so good. Only that snarl up at the Pangani interchange. But after that, you could either use Muranga Road into town or Forest Road, which is now called Professor Wangari Maathai Road. So far, everything from this direction is clear in as far as Thika Road and Kiambu Road. Let's take a look at Waiyaki Way. And for Waiyaki Way, let's go as far back as Uthiru. From Uthiru past Mountain View Mall, past Nagi Plaza, all the way past ABC Place. Everything so far so good, everything looking new, even past Lion Place as well. Into Westlands and beyond. So far so good. This is a Museum Hill roundabout, or rather interchange now. It used to be a roundabout, by the way. The Museum Hill roundabout, when I don't think you were born back then.
I also
you came and found the interchange.
I also don't think so.
Yes, it's clear so far. A bit of a snarl up as you get closer to the University Way roundabout, just there, and it's just because of the entry into town, the University Way roundabout. You could choose to go down University Way onto Globe Cinema roundabout or onto Uhuru Highway. So far so good, and getting into town from this direction of Waiyaki Way is okay so far. Let's go cross over to the other side of town and take a look at Mombasa Road, all the way from Lolongo, past Cabanas. A bit of a snarl up here opposite the Imara shopping mall, but very small. We do not know what the issue is. Past Next Gen Mall, all the way past Capital Center. Even the Nyayo Stadium area is looking good this morning. Yesterday there was a bit of an issue. And all the way into town, nothing much to report from the Mombasa Road direction. On Langata Road also looking good. Only a bit of a snarl up opposite the Wilson Airport bit, just before you get to the Timol roundabout, but after that, everything else is okay. Even the Mbagathi Way from the Timol roundabout to City Mortuary roundabout looking clear at this time. Ngong Road 2 from the Junction Mall all the way beyond Prestige Mall, a bit of a snarl up going the other direction of the Prestige Mall, but all the way to the City Mortuary roundabout, it's looking clear. And that's it. The other one is Jogoo Road, and it's also looking clear this morning. Let's take a look at the weather, quick one. And the weather here this morning. Yes.
Chances of it today raining in the evening?
Yes, it's about 17 degrees as we speak, but it feels like 17, yes. Chances of rain, 10%, humidity 96%. It is definitely raining in Nairobi this morning. So definitely, maybe not during the day, but don't be shocked if it rains during the day. But usiku lazima kunanyesha. Kulinyesha jana usiku. Oh, yes. So that's the weather this morning.
And even parts of Nairobi yesterday, some Waiyaki around there was raining cats and dogs.
Okay.
Yes.
Clear.
Right. Let's take a look at the news diary, what to expect as of today. So the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs will be having a joint sitting with the Senate Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights Committee today on the actualization of the National Dialogue Committee NADCO report, with a specific focus to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Amendment Bill 2024. That will be coming up. Subsequent bulletins do expect that and what will be said. So far, the couple of meetings that JLAC has organized, the members abstained, or rather did not attend this meeting, so we hope to see how this will be happening. And if you're in these parts of Nairobi and Busia, do expect some power outages, according to the Kenya Power Lighting and Company, KPLC, around Nairobi, parts of Kamunde Road as well as Lenana Road. And if you're in Busia, residents of Alupe and Amerikwai will also be affected in those areas. Let's take a look at to the next page, into courts now. And Jared Peter Kwaga and others will be appearing before the Milimani Anti-Corruption Court today for hearing of a suit for forfeiture of unexplained wealth of 1.98 billion cash shillings and properties worth 328.4 million against million cash shillings against defendants. On to the next page. Today is to expect that demo by Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union, as well as other medic unions, will be holding a peaceful demonstration as they fault the government for failing to address the issues pertaining promotion of this doctors specifically. So the demo will see the doctors march from around Kenyatta Hospital to give key government entities such as Ministry of Health, Treasury, Council of Governors, and Parliament. And tomorrow they will also be having now a mega demo. Doctors from different parts of the country will also be joining on this demonstration as well. And finally, before we cross over to Today in History, we'll be taking a look at the Committee on Trade, Industry and Cooperatives will be meeting with officials of NCPB as well as KEBS to be apprised on the reported fake fertilizer sold to unsuspecting farmers. We'll also be telling you on that. That will be happening at around 12 p.m. So stick around for that, even in a 1 p.m. bulletin. And that among others. Let's take a look at our Today in History for you now. And they take you back in 2021. Here in Africa, where a court in Paris handed down life sentences to 2 Ivorian officers and a Belarusian mercenary who were tried in absentia for the deadly 2004 bombing of French peacekeepers in Ivory Coast that triggered days of fierce clashes. That is all for you on Matters Today in History. That news diary will be updated as we continue during the day. And that is our cue to get into the papers now.
Right, and we have exactly 9 minutes to go through all these newspapers, and we start off with the Standard. United by fear factor is a big headline on the front page of the Standard. Matters politics, and they call it intrigues. The Deputy President Gachagua and the National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula held a meeting to discuss government agenda at a time the two leaders are under political pressure. Remember, there's a pressure for Ford Kenya to wind up and join UDA. Meanwhile, the Deputy President is concerned about the provision within the party's constitution for 3 deputy party leaders. Now, these 2 leaders met, and according to an analyst, Gachagua and Wetangula could be united by fear, informed by the very person who should be cautious to disorient the 2022 political arithmetic. So Matters political intrigues featuring on the front page of the Standard. The other story given prominence is a picture there of Helen Obiri after winning the Boston Marathon. This was the 128th edition yesterday. And once again, congratulations to Helen Obiri. This was a back-to-back win, having won the same last year. Very interesting highlights on the front page of the Standard as well, the top strip. They talk about a big sex trade in massage parlors.
Oh, yes.
Wow, interesting.
I'd already, started reading all that, and according to there's one in Ngara.
I knew you would go straight into the story. But anyway, you can read that for yourself on page 8 of the Standard.
Oh, yes.
Elsewhere, medics plan weekly protests. Yes, as a doctor strike continues to bite. And finally, on the international scene, Nigeria claims wanted crypto boss in Kenya. That's matters business. On the back page, yes, that painful loss for Arsenal and Liverpool. Arsenal and Liverpool left in pain as momentum shifts in Manchester City's favour. Matters English Premier League. It features prominently on the back page of the Standard. That's the Standard this morning.
All right, let's take a look at Daily Nation. They say why Atwoli is under siege, and they're asking. Cornered combative veteran trade unionist Francis Atwoli is between a rock and a hard place, with things starting to align against him, from a new push to halt private guards' quota deductions and a bill seeking to end his long career, to criticism over his lukewarm stance on workers' issues, from an opposition he dumped after the 2022 election. Was on pages 4 and 5. On the bottom, a conversation that Fred will be having later on, which is on the back page. We'll get to that. Matters wage bill crisis. But before that, the heavy rains wreak havoc, and the unrelenting downpours continue to wreak havoc across the country, leaving a trail of death. More highlights are on the right scroll. Ambassador jobs, all eyes on MPs as they prepare reports. The Committee on Defence and Foreign Affairs retreated to a Nairobi hotel on Friday to write its report on the nominees' suitability. And a very interesting story on page 3. Pesky baboons drive tenants out of estate. That's in Nakuru, in Nakuru's free area, where the urban landscape meets the untamed wilderness. Human ambition clashes with nature's mischievous side. And that's where, Fred, you call home.
Yes. We've been living very comfortably alongside the wildlife in Nakuru. So I don't know why. I don't know tulikosea nia wapi.
PO, they're also being affected by cost of living.
Their union is, I think, very strong at this time.
That is on page 3. You can read more about it. And probably the baboons are being affected by the high cost of living, and they have to look for food elsewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
All right. You were to take a look at the back page. It's a big National Wage Bill Conference.
Oh, yes. They're saying the agency's push for single payroll for public workers. There's a quote there, Principal Secretary Amos Gavesha. The ultimate objective is to have all payroll systems in the public service migrated to HRISK, which is the Human Resource Information System, Kenya. And we'll also be taking a look at what will be said on today's meeting in Bomas of Kenya.
Right. Kwa sababu wa muda tuharakishe kiasi, kuna gazeti la Taifa Leo. Karata fiche ya ma-DVD. Mudavadi aonekana kucheza siasa zake kwa tahadhari kubwa akijiandaa kwa kura ya mwaka 2027 baada ya Mudavadi kudokeza nia ya chama cha ANC kuingia katika ndoa na UDA majuma kadhaa yaliyopita, kisha viongozi wa chama wakakana. Baraza kuu la chama linapanga kujadili mada hiyo. Habari ya nyani wakiteka ploti na kuiba na kucharaza na kutimua wapangaji kule free area Nakuru. Habari hii pia imepewa kipaumbele kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo.
Kuna taarifa iko pale juu, ningeomba usiruke.
Tutafika pale, lakini tuangazie vidokezo zaidi kwenye ukurasa wa mbele. Wanasiasa wa Mlimani waingia maji. Wahisi utendakazi duni wa serikali eneo hilo watishia nafasi zao katika uchaguzi ujao. Kwingineko, ruhusu viwanda visage miwa. Na baza fungwa kwa kuuzia watoto dawa. Kini pale juu najua unataka nidokezee kidokezo hichi. Ndio mwisho wa makeke ya Arsenal, ni swali wanauliza pale. Kichapo kutoka kwa Aston Villa charejesha kumbukumbu ya mwaka uliopita. Na hilo ndilo gazeti la Taifa Leo ukurasa wa mbele.
Na usiseme sikukueleza wakati huo. Angazia gazeti la People Daily. No more pay rise. We'll be having that conversation later on. Cash crunch amidst raging strike by medics over remuneration. The government announces that there will be no salary increase for civil servants due to what it describes as hard economic times and heavy wage bill. But something to smile about in Kenya today, Kenya's pride, Helen Obiri, picture there celebrating after defending her Boston Marathon title in the United States with a blazing time of 2 hours, 22 minutes and 37 seconds. At the very top, the very top, education matters. Primary school heads demand promotion. Was on page 4. And finally, Kibunji seized over 490 million Kenyan shillings salary fraud. From People Daily, you'd like to take a look at Business Daily before we get into the cartoons?
Oh, yes, matters business. Big firms buying Kenya's carbon credits revealed. Giant U.S. companies top the list of global players snapping up deals in Kenya's nascent voluntary carbon market, the VCM, according to a new report. And they've listed companies like Netflix, Apple, Shell, among multinationals eyeing Kenya. Some Kenyan credits sold in compliance markets. Oh, yes. That's a big story on the front page of the Business Daily. It's something you need to read because as we head even more into this business about carbon credits. Also on the front page of the Business Daily, poultry farmers protest U.S. push to open Kenyan market. That's at the bottom there. And more highlights of the ticker. Retail investors overtake parastatals in bond holdings. Elsewhere, CBK targets green project cheats with new rules. And finally, 7Seas spared 610 million shillings tax in deal. That's the Business Daily today.
Right. We had not taken a look at the Star. Brushing through it. Ruto tough choices start to bear fruit. They say steady appreciation of the shilling has cut Kenya's debt by at least 1 trillion Kenyan shillings on pages 4 and 5. And I'm pretty sure we'll be highlighting some of this with the panelists this morning. They say better times. National Securities Exchange named the world's best performing stock market in 2024. Interesting. World's best. Okay. I think as the country, we're so used to sad news that and just negative news that when we even see some of these things, we are, wow, really?
It feels a bit weird.
Yes. Which country?
See this on the front page of a newspaper. Just positive stories about the government and what the government has done. And you've actually listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things that the government has done well.
Oh, yes.
This is a Star this morning.
Plus, NSC named world's best performing stock market in 2024. Kwa nini kwa nchi ingine?
Karibu niangalie date niangalie kama tu April tarehe fulani lakini ni sawa.
Other highlights on this paper on the bottom scroll, Kenyans dare to hope as cost of living eases. More good news there. And the sound economic policies, economy heading in the right direction, Nyoro. For once in a long time, the front page of such a paper has some good news. Remember last week we were having negative news on those papers. Positive news about the government, that's the front page of the Star today. Oh, yes. A quick look at the cartoons because we have about a minute or less. On page 17 of the Daily Nation, we have a cartoon on the police IG's declaration of the doctor strike illegal, and they have the police IG in a shed branded police D-service. And he says, lawful picketing is unlawful. The irony of it. That's a cartoon on the Daily Nation. On the Standard, page 14, talk about 2 years after the last general election, and the electorate, burdened by already the high cost of living, is carrying the incumbent shoulder high. And these are the governors, the incumbent as well as the governors, who are holding a stick and a carrot towards 2027. And the stick is, the carrot is a service delivery, promises of service delivery ahead as we head towards the 2027 general election. And finally, behind you, People Daily on page 10, Stanu's take, the doctor's strike, and this gentleman in bed says life, no balance. That is Mheshimiwa and his family going abroad for treatment, yani. And he's in a public hospital, and sure enough, Mhesh and the family boarding a jet plane abroad. All right. We'll be looking at some of these discussions with my panelists this morning, focusing
Part of it will be looking at the wage bill debate. Professor Fred Ogola, economic and governance expert, will be in studio alongside Gati Denita, a former MP Migori County, and political analyst Daniel Rogo. So do stand by for that conversation, of which you can be part of through our social media pages on X at TV47 News and on Facebook TV47 Kenya. All right, let's take a break now. You're still watching Morning Cafe. 7 with me, Fred Indimuli. Time for us to take a look at the state of the nation. And this morning we're privileged to have in studio Professor Fred Ogolla, economic and governance expert. Karibu sana, good morning.
Asante sana, Fred.
Yes, and alongside Professor Ogolla, we do have Daniel Orogo, political analyst. Karibuni sana.
Pleasure.
And even before we even began the discussion, we just come from a newspaper review session, and I can see the debate about what's on the front page of the Star is key. So if my director can help me with that, let's beam the front page of the Star. The Star this morning has chosen to go with a list of issues that this government is being credited for, and they say Ruto tough choices start to bear fruit. It is not the kind of headline you usually see on the front pages of any of the dailies. They talk about steady appreciation of the shilling has cut Kenya's debt by at least 1 trillion shillings. They go ahead to list the shillings rally against the US dollar from 162 to 100 and less below 130. Price of maize flour reducing from 220 to 110 in April. Price of petrol dropping from 217 to 199. Price of a 2-kilogram pack of sugar from 500 bob to 250. And the latest price of electricity going down by about 8 shillings for a unit. Is that what they're saying? And prices of 5 liters of cooking oil dropping from 1,800 to about 1,500. Now, we've just been seeing many newspapers, many of our dailies listing the raft of problems and a raft of issues that Kenyans are facing. This is the first time we're seeing such a headline. And I don't know why you, Professor, you disagree with this approach by the Star.
No, first of all, there is what we call in economics lagging variables and leading variables. Lagging variables are the things you do. Leading variables are the outcome you get. For example, you see the Star has said Ruto's tough choices are bearing fruit, meaning that there are some things Ruto is doing that's leading to those good economic outcomes. But the Star has not reported what exactly has he done. Tough choices, we ask the president to make smart choices, not tough choices. The tough choices are leading for example, he has been making of cutting, trying to say he's trying to cut the budget. He has not done. He said he was going to cut the budget by 100 billion, 300 billion. He didn't do that. All the things he said G to G did not work, isn't it? The issue of fertilizer, it was a scam. So how can all these fakeness leads to this drop in prices? Let me tell Kenyans, and I think Kenya need to be educated here economically. The truth of the matter is that what we are seeing in economics is what we call in economics positive externalities. It's like you are walking on the road and you find somebody was distributing bananas. Then you just pick bananas and eat. Can you say now there's food security in your neighborhood? No. It was just something someone gives you. The opposite is what we call negative externalities. It's like when we were growing up in Kibera, you are walking next to somebody's house, and that's the time they are now pouring water from their house. They just wash you with it. So those are the things that can happen to you which you didn't plan. They are negative, opposite to positive. So what has happened is that the dollar has really depreciated significantly across all the foreign currencies. In fact, one of my client who was in Spain, he used to import seeds from US that he buys in dollars, and he sells them in euros. He called me and told me, I'm very happy because the dollar has really depreciated. Okay. So I'm purchasing the seeds from US in dollars and selling euros. So my margins are higher.
So let me get you right, Prof. Your bone of contention or your disagreement with the Star today is not the fact that these things are factually correct. It's only that probably the president should not take credit.
No, he should not take credit, but also at the same time, I was the supermarket yesterday in Quickmart. The prices has not really dropped. And the Star has to show us what are these sources they're getting from. But in spite of that, we know very well that the dollar has really depreciated. And also the global fuel prices has dropped. The fuel prices, I'm thinking that the Kenyans should get reward for this one. These are totally God's blessing. It's God's making. I think it's a gift from God, not that a gift from Kenya Kwanza. That it seems that these things have dropped, and Kenyans' prayer maybe has been that they have been praying to the president. They stopped praying to the president, now they're praying to God, and God has allowed the dollar to go down. They should get these benefits much more. According to me, The prices should even drop much more. Looking at the global prices has dropped in the fuel, the dollar has gone down because the dollar going down and the fuel price going down has an impact on the cost of electricity, cost of movement, transport, logistics. So there should be more. Okay. If you ask me, let me just explain this. Corruption has doubled, and because corruption has doubled, that's what has been doubling the cost of everything else. What they need to do is to lower corruption, because we saw last time saying that corruption has doubled. We used to lose 2 billion shillings, according to Uhuru Kenyatta, per day on corruption. If it doubled, it means we are now losing 4 billion shillings per day. If we can be able to lower that corruption, actually, I can tell you, fuel will be 99 shillings, okay, isn't it? And actually, bread would be not 60 shillings, but 30 shillings. Okay. And the same thing will go to cooking oil, rice, sugar, among other commodities.
Let's bring in Daniel to this conversation. Daniel, you see a stamp on the front page: belt tightening lowers cost of living. The Star has drawn a correlation between Kenya Kwanza administration actions and the resultant issues that even Professor agrees, yes, there is some relative reduction in the cost of some of these things. Yes, we've seen the cost of fuel has gone down over the past few months. Kenya Power has come out to say the cost of electricity has gone down. It is a relationship between these reductions and actions by the current administration. Do you think that probably we're being too unfair to the president when we say that none of this can be attributed to his actions?
Well, good morning, Fred, and to the viewers. Well, let me first of all agree. Let's have a general agreement that there is a sense in which the cost of living and the price of some basic commodities have seen reduction. And this is open, this is clear, and let's not, and I agree with the professor, let's not really, it's quite difficult to get there next year of what really the government has done to deal with this kind of measures that is now being splashed on the Star today, just attaching like when with regards to lowering the prices of basic commodities. This is what the Kenya Kwanza government have done. For example, we have reduced the cost of certain things and all that. So it's quite difficult because, this is a splash. It's difficult really to break down and attribute what really was done by this government with regards to what has been splashed. And to that extent, I fully agree with Professor that this is what, to the face value, if you splash this in front of Kenyans and who are waking up and taking their newspapers and various vendors, it's a good news to see. We can see this. But
speaking, this is good news for.
That's what I'm saying. But it's that's why I'm calling it a splash. It's quite easy read for anyone who would want to grab the papers and see that indeed, this is, now we can have, the prices of petrol reduced at 199. Good news. Now we can have the, the prices of, of maize from 220 to 10. Good news. But I think this is where, and we hope we could have somebody from that particular angle to tell us exactly what was the tough economic choices that were really made, that attributed that to that kind of reduction. That is what I'm seeing. Mm-hmm. And on this set, we have been saying that, it's quite difficult for this administration to explain to Kenyans the nitty-gritties of these particular initiatives. Because to some extent, I believe the Kenya Kwanza government has good communicators. Mm. Just like, they were going in town halls and telling, meeting different people, mama mbogas and boda riders and people with different initiatives, and breaking down what the administration will do when they get to power. It's quite difficult for them to come back and tell Mwananchi, this is what we've done. But of course, we see it on splashed on the newspaper. But again, Prof has taken an economic angle. Let me see it from a political point of view. And with regards to these, there are things that I am seeing ahead of what is coming. One, we having the third annual wage bill conference. And the head of state must find something to tell the public. Okay? He must find something to break down to the public. And probably this is one of the address. You saw over weekend in one of the churches, this is what he said, that we have taken tough choices. And people are applauding, kind of a good initiative. And the head of state and the Kenya Kwanza government is seen to be listening to Kenyans from the face value. And I'm saying this probably could be, one of the basic, foundation of a conversation to the third National Wage Bill Conference that is expected to address, either today or tomorrow. I foresee this as a situation where, again, politically, the president is gearing towards and gravitating towards what will he tell the public in the State of the Nation address that is expected. Mm-hmm. These are some of the issues that the current, we are gravitating towards finding packaged information for an address and accountability to the Kenya Kwanza government. But, like I've said, Fred, even you, it is difficult to trace exactly what has been done with these nitty-gritties to reduce this cost of living.
Okay, perhaps the concern, Professor, would be the sustainability of some of these positive things we are seeing. That if at all Kenya Kwanza is keen on taking credit for the reduction in fuel prices, electricity prices, and all these things, even the shilling's rally against the dollar, then the challenge would be for the same administration to ensure that this is sustained for a good period of time. Do you think that is where Kenya Kwanza will be exposed?
Let me try to attribute these things to one thing that Kenyans know very well. Analogy accepted here. Fred, I don't know whether you're a football fan. There's a year a team called Leicester City won Premier League. And then after that, they have gone under in the out of Premier League. Now they are not even in Premier League. They have been eliminated, if you like. But teams like Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester United, Manchester City, Chelsea tend to remain among the top 7 thereabout, isn't it? So the choices made by Arsenal, Manchester United, Man City, Chelsea, and the rest tend to keep them within top 7. But a team that won the Premier League once, then went under, is that sustainable? So this is what we are seeing here. And let me just try to be a little bit very clear. Whatever we are seeing here are macroeconomic issues, not microeconomic issues. And we are benefiting from macroeconomic issues and actually global macroeconomic issues, not national. Because what are we doing nationally? We have increased. Let's talk about what are tough choices before we talk about what they are giving us. One tough choices was increased taxation, isn't it? How has increased taxation lowered the cost of living? Mm-hmm. We know that the more you increase taxes, the higher the prices of goods are. That's a tough choice he's made. Actually, we should be getting the opposite. I'm sure that is correct. Second thing they talked about was the issue of the issue of exporting G2G oil, isn't it? That completely failed. Third choice, which we know from the president, was he said that I will not subsidize consumption, I'll subsidize what? Production, isn't it? What was it? Fertilizer, isn't it? Now, when you don't subsidize consumption, you don't lower the cost of commodities, right? And when your commodities should remain the same, but now you should increase production. Now looking at the supply-demand forces, the cost of living goes down. Now, unga has gone down, isn't it? If the price of unga has gone down because of production, let us see whether there was a bumper harvest in the areas where there were farmers have been given. Forget about what it's called. I heard them calling it substandard fertilizer. It was not substandard. It was fake fertilizer. It was not fertilizer in the first case. So I know the Inturi trying to justify that it was a substandard. It was not. So if the fertilizer project has collapsed because of corruption, G2G oil deal collapsed because of corruption, everything the government has done has collapsed. The issue of sugar. Sugar was also supposed to be lowered with some kind of importation deals. That also collapsed. So I am not seeing the correlation between the president's choices and what he's taking credit for, and therefore that's not sustainable. Fred, if you become number 1 in class from number 15, and then your father takes you out for dinner and tells you, my son, next time now maintain number 1, do you think you're going to sleep? So it is not sustainable because you've gotten this one by fluke, and you cannot explain your success with your action. And therefore, according to me, Kenya Kwanza should be worried because sooner or later, if the global macroeconomic environment changes, they might find difficulty to explain. I'm not even concerned about the political part of it. Because let me tell you what, if you take credit for what you have not scored, it's quite easy that it will actually come to show. Okay. And according to me, if at all the president is wise enough, he should not just even take credit for this. He should just actually continue praying to God the way he's a prayerful man, so that God can do the magic.
And Daniel, the president was actually right at the end of last year. In December, he said the Kenyans should not blame him for the high cost of fuel, saying the issue is beyond him. So whether it improves or worsens, that is not due to anything that he has done. Should he now come out and say this is down to his actions?
He even said, I think in that he's not even responsible for,
yes.
for that is not that is not within his mandate or responsible for those kind of actions. And it's quite, that's why I said it's quite difficult to attribute some of these particular successes to the tough economic choices that the president, elaborately, explained to the congregation, and to an extent to Kenyans who stayed glued and maybe watched him later with those kind of, statements. So while it might be an issue, because I hear professors talking about the issues of, as a result of international or global macroeconomic, environment that could be attributed to some of these, particular, discussions that we are seeing today. But I think it's quite important as a president who posture, and a president that would really want to put a face to an executive that really works all around to listen to Kenyans, and embark on this, popular. He says this is not popular initiative. I mean, he's saying he doesn't want to embark on anything that is popular, but want to do something that is right every time, so that Kenyans, in fact, he says he doesn't want some people to applaud him, and to clap for him for some of these initiatives that he's making. But in the background, we are seeing a president that would want to. And this is why I'm saying it's quite important to see where the head of the nation is posturing himself and Kenyans too, with regards to, the public platforms that he finds himself, to market Kenyan, to market himself, and, to rebrand the face of this administration. So with all these factors coming into play, both political factors, economic factors, it's quite clear to understand where the president is trying to place himself. And just like I've said, finding himself in a pedestal where he cannot really fast track and explain clearly what his administration has done, in the background of, other heads of state is a problem. Okay. And attributing this to, to his own success and to success of the administration, this scores for him. So that's why I was clear to understand. I wish that we could have someone from this administration to clearly explain to us. Perhaps, we overthinking. Perhaps we by default dismissing.
Or perhaps the star is wrong.
Perhaps the star is wrong and could go down to break. It could be quite unfortunate that we cast some aspersion. Okay. And that's why I'm exercising a lot of restraint. Unless the Kenya Kwanza government is purely able to attribute this success directly to some of these actions that they embarked on economically that would want to post of them in the future.
But Fred, just to highlight something, we know that in most sense that success is always have a father, but failure is an orphan. So we have so many failures. Kenya Kwanza has made wrong decisions, and no one wants to take credit. For example, fertilizer, who is responsible? No one is owning up to that. G2G deal, who is taking up for that one? The issue of overborrowing and the debt that is actually fake debt. We have fake debt in Kenya. For example, according to the official debt, according to the parliament, there should be 2.1 trillion. Treasury says 6.2 trillion. In State House, around 11.98 trillion. So all these fakeness we are trying to see, the misperforming, for example, doctors are on strike. Who is taking credit for doctors being on strike? Who is taking credit for G2G oil? Who is taking credit for the fake fertilizer? Who is taking credit? No, you cannot just take credit, but you do not want to discredit anything else. So in equal measure, since Kenya Kwanza come to government, are they able to list down some of the misses that they have missed so that we can see some of those scores they have made? Okay. And I think that if we don't really evaluate this, if you go to a country, for example, like US and UK, whenever someone comes with an economic policy, they wait. For example, you see, since Tony Blair left Prime Minister of UK, have you seen so many Prime Ministers coming and 2 days you go? Some of them have taken 1 week, 2 weeks. You come, your economic policy does not work, you go home. In Kenya here, you have several missteps, and if something happens in your misstep, which has just come without you doing anything, then you take credit for it. Okay. I think that that is not the way I want to go. And according to me, to be honest, I'm not a politician, but to be honest, I think that we must start looking at this reporting well, because why this star breaks my heart. When someone will become next president next year, will say, just wait, I'll also be understood one day, because people will not believe me. And they'll take us through a long process of failure, because we cannot see where they are going now. People start believing Kenya Kwanza and reducing checking on how they are misperforming, believing they are going to turn it around.
Okay. The Star reads the highlight headline, Ruto tough choices start to bear fruit, is what we've been discussing here with my panelists. Time for us to take a break. When we come back, we focus more on the National Wage Bill Conference. You're watching Morning Cafe. We continue our discussion here with Professor Fred Ogola, economic and governance expert, and political analyst Daniel Rogo. We now want to focus on the wage bill debate. The National Wage Bill Conference enters the second day today at the Nairobi Safari Club. At the Bomas of Kenya. At the Bomas of Kenya. It will go on even up until tomorrow. It features on the front pages this morning, on the Daily Nation front page, wage bill crisis, push for single payroll. That's what features on the front page of the Daily Nation. And on the People Daily, it is the main headline this morning, no more pay rise. Amidst raging strike by medics over remuneration, government announces that there will be no salary increase for civil servants due to what it describes as hard economic times and heavy wage bill. At a time when doctors are on strike, and we'll start with you, Daniel. It is a very key discussion. The government says we've been paying too much in as far as the public sector wage bill is concerned. Actually 1.1 trillion shilling against a revenue collection of about 2.38 trillion by the KRA. There's about 46.6%, almost 47% of that, and they want to reduce it to 35%. Many would argue, okay, fine, just increase your revenue collection, the percentage will go down. But it is clear that there will be pain ahead for civil servants, no more pay rise, and no more increases in allowances. But the question is, are we having the right conversation? Is this administration ready to bite the bullet and actually do what is required?
And you see, this is why I said it's quite interesting how we get to handle, even how we communicate this kind of, seems so important. So you look at the Daily Nation, this is a wage bill crisis, and then the story is pushed to the back page.
Well, the back page is actually one of the main pages of the newspaper.
It's serious. It is on the front page. It's mentioned on the front page, and then it's pushed to the back page. So I would not want to, get too much in it. But Fred, we were asking what is the significance of this wage bill conference at a time when you've just alluded to that we are having more strike, and more strikes are on their way, because I was mentioning yesterday that it's quite, difficult to trace how would governments, for example, going back to breaking down of these CBAs, I'm coming to the conference. What we are here and what we are discussing before we started with the Prof is the manner to which the government embarks on initiative to cool down, the expected public outrage on various things. And you look at the sustainability of some of these initiatives. For example, we are having a wage bill conference in the background of a strike and industrial action by medics, and expected, because I hear rumors, probably there are other people that would want to go to the strike because of the breaking down of CBAs and disagreement with government issues. So, I think this is one of the ways that the government would want to reduce the public pressure. One is to make sure that all other looming strikes are contained by the measures that have been, and we were expecting this yesterday, that the SRC would embark on an initiative to try to harmonize the salaries and remuneration for all public servants. Regardless of which institutions or offices you're working on, that your pay is regularized, that there would be no expected pay rise for any institution or public service that would want to go out in the street in the foreseeable near future to say that we need a pay rise, regardless of whether there was a CBA that was signed before. And you've heard that government has embarked on different pronouncements saying that some of these CBAs were signed with duress. People are under pressure to sign them. And I wonder sometimes, Prof, how would you, sit somewhere and sign with government advisors and lawyers in those rooms and these trade unions? How would you sign this kind of agreements on, under duress? But going back to this, I saw the head of public service, and the chair of Salaries and Remuneration Commission making a pronouncement yesterday again that some of these initially agreed documents or agreements would really have to go under review to make sure that they align with the current economic system that we have, or the current revenue that's collected, or try to harmonize it so that it's aligned with the PFM Act. But I think the House is what really we also need to give into perspective, because there are conferences and a lot of conferences. Where is the citizens in this conversation? We have a lackluster government that do not want to hear to professionals. I don't know whether Prof is invited into this kind of conversations, or whether we have a problem listening to professionals. The officials and the government officials want to listen to themselves. And that is why we are so much in disdain of listening to people who would guide even our economic policy and, give us an advice on how our economic, current economic affairs is faring on. So this kind of, I agree, I'm not disabusing the importance of having this conference. I am just saying where are we, what is the outcome? You know, what is it intended for? Who is in this conversation? You know, what is the implementation plan? You know, was it a must that we have it as a conference? Or then we could have directed the institutions that are concerned to really give us a report and a progress on this.
But
did we have to convene a conference?
Looking at the data, Prof, and if we just go down and look at the numbers, 46% of collectible revenue going towards wage bill is probably unsustainable. Yeah. But there are those who argue that probably it's an issue of revenue collection, not necessarily a bloated public sector workforce. Yeah. That if at all KRA was collecting more, then definitely we would not be talking about 46, 47%. It will go much lower. Do you think that that probably is where we should be focusing on?
Yeah,
the tightening of belts that we've been talking about.
First of all, let me put this a bit into perspective. First of all is that Kenyans' wage bill to GDP is about 7.6%. Remember that is very good if you talk about Kenya being among the middle income economy. So that number looks very good. Nevertheless, if we go to what we are talking about is that to reduce the debt, to reduce the wage bill to GDP, there are two strategies. Mm-hmm. Because remember that one is a numerator, one is a denominator. So either you increase the GDP growth, and if you increase the GDP growth by arithmetically, the percentage of the wage bill to GDP will actually improve, isn't it? Or if you reduce wage bill, again it reduces, but which one is better? It is better to increase the GDP growth because when you reduce wage bill, you are removing money from people. For example, if you cut salaries of doctors, teachers, to achieve this one, it's actually a joke because they cannot afford to pay for housing, they cannot afford to buy food. So I think that cutting wage bill, I would call it an austerity measure. But it is called stimulus package on growing economy by putting money into people's pockets. At the same time, when you put money in people's pocket, it goes into increasing the economic growth. So according to me, it is just a big joke that we are sitting in a conference. I don't know how long is it? How long?
3 days.
3 days. How much does it cost us to spend 3 days conference where people are mostly going to get allowances and all these things, spending again to try to reduce our spending, which we won't actually achieve? According to me, it's a big joke because if I was the president, he said he was going to create a labor-intensive economy in the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. By targeting to lower wage bill, actually you are not concerned about labor-intensive economy. And I think the president is not being honest and sincere to his economic policy. And I repeat that Kenya Kwanza's bottom-up economic model was not sincere because, first of all, it does not exist. There's no author, there's no publisher. It was just a joke. So according to me, the issue also, you have to understand the structure of this government. We have grown our GDP, but mostly through debt. Look at the GDP of Kenya has grown because of the SGR, the expressway, the infrastructural projects we have done, so that even if we are having a lower wage bill to GDP, it's not good because the GDP mostly is built on debt. Mm-hmm. Because if you look at our debt ceiling, has actually skyrocketed. And the other thing which you have to understand is that Kenya Kwanza thought they are going to cure the issue of the economy by trying to collect more of the revenue so that they can reduce our debt. But actually, it has not happened because the poor collection is leading to us having a higher wage bill, isn't it, to the GDP or to revenue collection. And according to me, why don't we listen to what we told the president as advice? Do not overtax Kenyans so that you can collect more, because they are thinking that if you increase the taxes you are collecting, increase the levies and all these things to collect more. But in the fund analysis that you are reducing number of jobs being created and not increasing more people coming to the job bracket and therefore reducing your collection from income. According to me, lower the taxes so that you widen the tax base, isn't it? But if you lower the taxes, you widen the tax base, reduce the government expenditure, because that's where...
Now that you're talking about a tax, the taxes and increased taxation, there's a very interesting headline I've seen from Uganda.
Yeah.
If my director can assist me with this, on the new vision. And the main headline on the front page is there's a new tax amendment, a new tax amendment bill that seeks to tax top earners 58% as payee.
No.
And I'm wondering, okay, we've been complaining here that 30%, even 35% is high, plus other deductions as well. So when the conversation goes to such huge percentages of payee, what does that mean for any?
No, those things don't work. I can tell you, in developing countries, the issue is never about how much you tax. The issue is what you do with the money. In UK, for football players who are there, they pay 50% of their income to tax. But you have public transport, which is efficient, affordable, isn't it? You have services, education, you have for education services, you have healthcare. But here, the only time you meet governments is in your payroll. Mm-hmm. The only time you meet the government when they are reading your pay slip. If you go to the supermarket, you are on your own. You go to hospital, you are on your own. You go to school, you're on your own. You are going to travel with your vehicle, you're on your own. You're going to a fuel station, you're on your own. It can never happen like that. If you can take more from me, but you take care of other things on my behalf, it works. Okay. In a welfare state like you go to Spain, you go to the Nordic countries, for example, you go to Norway, those countries, there's high taxation, but money works for you. But here, money only goes to one person who does whatever they want with. In fact, the issue of taxing upper class heavily to feed middle class has always been seen as a Robin Hood strategy. Mm-hmm. Steal from the rich and give to the poor. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that has never worked because it's not sustainable. Remember that the rich people are owners of capital. The more they put capital into an economy, the more they create jobs for other people. Okay. And some of these rich people, they have so many dependents. Like now, Fred, you know that if you lose your job, your house will lose your job. Maybe your driver will lose your job. Somebody taking care of your vegetable. So there are so many people that if your income goes down, also their income goes down and they suffer. Don't set people against payroll versus those without payroll. Okay. And this kind of putting people between upper class and middle class is never worked anywhere. And
we digress because we are focusing on that headline in Uganda. But back to the wage bill debate.
I think for me, now that there's a conference that is ongoing, and we have criticized and try to interrogate the outcome of this particular conference. I want to foresee that. Because the Kenya government is watching us and probably would want to ask, then now we have what then would be a point of conversation in this particular conference. What I see is quite important because there's pronouncement of whether, the SRC, they're talking about, 47.3% of their wage bill, that is, it takes 60% to pay the payment of the debts, as Prof has said. So for me, it's a question of, we have the conference, we have the stakeholders attending this particular conference. How would there be a conversation on having this particular kind of conference, discuss on how to deal with our foreign debts and domestic debts? And I agree so much with what Prof said with regards to how then are we budgeting for corruption? People are consuming, substandard particular products, and the cabinet secretary talking about the issues of wage bill being issues of morality. Moses Kuria said that it's quite important now for a particular conference to look at wage bill now as a moral issue and as an issue to be responsible about, because he says that you can't really understand how much of this particular revenue collected and Kenyans are being robbed. Like Prof is saying that the government is now raiding the pockets of Kenyans. But it's quite little to trace. What is the service delivery? People are being taxed. What does that translate?
The question has always been
with the services.
One would imagine that a bloated wage bill is a direct consequence of a bloated workforce.
Yes.
There are too many people working in the public service, more than we need.
Yes.
There are issues of ghost workers. Basically, government and both county and national have become more of employment bureaus.
Yes.
And one may wonder, Is that something we need to look at? That probably an audit of the workforce, not just the wage bill, of the workforce could, to some extent, remedy the kind of problem we have, and not necessarily just saying doctors need to earn less.
I mean, we've had these conversations before where there were different audits that have been done on the recruitment of those in the public service. Fred, you have seen that in certain extent, we have had even blotted, personalities. One particular job done by 3 people. And even to make it, that's why I agree with Honorable Moses Kuria, to make it even much painstaking, you find that recruitment sometimes are even based on ethnic inclination. And that is why I was talking about now, is it a moral issue? I mean, the Minister of Education just published, just a few days ago, I think that was on hiring on one of the institutions, and you could see even how that was the level of recruitment of that there was more of ethnic inclination, that was more of onboarding a number of people, but even much of it is fictitious payment of people who are ghost workers. Some have been dead. The other time we were discussing about how then would you even pay people who are no longer working. Some have retired even at home, but still being paid. They are not within the job market, but they're still being paid. So I think this is why I am, to some extent, I am very skeptical about this particular conference. So then there is an aspect of how much it will cost, allowances that will be paid. In essence, I think we've had a lot of reports about the recruitment of public service, the wage bill. We've had these reports.
But it is a conversation that we have to have. We can't avoid having this conversation.
Would we have a conversation on a conference level? I mean, there are reports that are indicating the measures that should have been done. There have been issues about austerity measures to this government. But they themselves have said we have austerity measures to reduce the wage bill.
But you do agree that some of these recommendations of some of these reports are very painful and may not be necessarily what the kind of things that any politically elected administration would want to go for. Issues like cutting down on the public sector size. Yeah. It's not something that a government would go for. So the last time we had something like that was, I think, during the Kibaki administration, when we had the, what do you call it? Probably, I think, Moi administration, the golden handshake, where a huge number of the civil service had to go home at a cost, of course. Yeah. After that, it's been very difficult to have any other president look at it that way.
As an economist, these are economic misnomers. Let me tell you, Fred, and I'll give you a scenario. You go home and you tell your wife that, let's assume you'll be giving allowance to your wife, to your son, your daughter, and the rest. Then you tell them, can we sit down and see how we can reduce the allowance I've been giving you? Then you measure the level of happiness in that family. It will go down. But if you come by telling them, we have been making money by doing some farming, well, I'm thinking that if we can do value addition to our productivity, we can produce more, and then actually we can allocate more money to our holiday, we can put more money to our picnic, we can put money to our travel. I'm sure you'll have a happy wife, you'll have a happy children. According to me, it's always minimalistic when people just think about how to cut. I'm not an austerity economist. I'm more of a stimulus economist. For example, I usually tell people that if you go home and you find that there's high cost of living, then you tell your wife, cut the cost of electricity because things are tough. You'll find your wife will be unhappy, but you tell her, if you lower the cost, how much you are spending in power will go to current, moving from, for example, let's say from Rongai. I'm sure that's more motivating. And according to me, let me just give you what I think is the main approach. First, I have to feel with doctors that when we are discussing about doctor strike, which is going today, I'm going to join them, we are again discussing about lowering wage bill. The issue has never been the wage bill. The issue is quality and productivity. Do we have quality civil servants that are highly productive and are increasing of high good services? For example, go to the immigration, passports, no one receives them. ID, no one receives them, and people are earning salary. There are some people who are earning salary are unable to give services because they don't have what they require to give services. For example, you are working in a government printer and you are being told the printer got broken down 2 years ago. So you are there managing what? You are a printer and there's no printer. You understand? You are a medical doctor. Doctors are managing death. They become death managers because you are in a hospital, there's no equipment, there's no medicine. You're being paid, but there's no one being treated. You go to devolution, we find their governors. They have appointed CECs. We have people who are experts in health, public health education. But then there are no books, there are no laboratories, isn't it? So are you really providing service? For me, we should shift to service. Then the problem we are going to have with this devolution, the issue of wage bill conference, is that there must be a balance between fiscal prudence and service delivery. Because if you cut the budget, wage bill, means sometimes you can throw away some people from work, isn't it? Are people going to receive services? There should be a balance between these things. According to me, the best thing we need to do is this, Fred. And I've done my maths here. We have to go and amend the Constitution of Kenya to reduce over-representation, because we have over-representation but under-service. We have, for example, 300 parliamentarians who could not read a bill. Why are we having 300 parliamentarians who cannot read a bill? How many senators do we have? How many MCs do we have in this country? Do we need all those people? And yet when it comes to debating a bill, budgets being passed in the county assemblies are the most shambolic ever. We should look for quality. I think every time I heard Raila Odinga campaigning, I also saw Kalonzo Musyoka manifesto, I saw Musalia Mudavadi's manifesto, I saw William Ruto. Every time they tell us we shall benchmark with Singapore, isn't it? But seriously, if you look at Singapore, Singapore has the highest quality human resource where people have high services. Even if you give them high salary, productivity is very high. Can we start discussing about productive wage, productive labor, rather than discussing cheap labor? Because what is cheap, Fred, is poor quality. If you have poor quality anchor here because you want to lower the wage bill of TV47, the discussion will be as poor. We won't come here, by the way, Fred. If you call me here and somebody is talking to me about things which don't make sense, no one will wake up in the morning to come and have a poor quality conversation. So for me, we should focus more on how can we be able to improve this. Then what is also concerning...
You agree with me that we need to reduce?
Yeah, we need to, we don't need to reduce, we need to increase productivity, because if you have a highly productive economy, GDP will grow.
So the question,
we don't have to cut salary. Then what is important for me, just before I finish, Fred, when we cut this wage bill, where are we taking the money? Because for me, you can cut the wage bill, but we take money to corruption. So have we gained anything?
Okay. We
should put this money into development, because we are talking about the proportion of money we are taking from budget. For example, out of the 4.2 trillion budget, 80% will go into recurrent expenditure, will never go development, only 20%. So if now we cut this wage bill, are we giving the president more access to money for corruption? Because corruption is increasing as we are reducing the wage bill. So are we making sense of ourselves? Why are we cutting money from everyone, but keeping money to a government that is not responsible by using our money well?
Wrap up that conversation for us.
Getting the perspective from Prof, which I still believe that we have a bloated, civil service, for example. And I agree that the only way sometimes to make that efficient and productive is that there have been audits that have been done to exactly point to that direction, that we have a bloated.
But some of the audits would suggest that you cut down on the workforce.
That's what I'm saying. So some of these have suggested that you cut down. And especially, I think, in their mind. And that is what I'm saying. It's quite difficult to try to get in the mind of government if you have someone representing that. But we just belabor to say that I foresee that kind of probably an initiative to them is trying to some austerity measures, maybe, which Prof do not agree with.
So you think they should cut out, they should fire some, or let go?
I think they should need to let go,
do some restructuring,
to some level. But I think this comes with an audit, not just, you don't just do it out of, just as a face value or something. You really need to get to know exactly where would there be efficiency if, some of these budgets are cut or some of these costs are cut. But on that, I agree with Prof. They are bare minimum. We are having a lot of reports. We are having a lot of conferences and all this. But if we really do not speak about the issues of corruption, because we agree that a number of these initiatives will point towards that direction, that even as much as you try to make public service efficient, but we have an elephant in the room. Even as much as we are trying to, get these ghost workers, and send some of them, fire them home, but that is corruption. It's unethical issues. So I had Prof saying,
you're back to what Moses Kuria said. So it is a moral issue.
It's a moral issue. At the end of the day, if Prof is saying that there's a budgeted for corruption, that is budgeted in that age and everything, then it seems is we are resigning and saying that then corruption becomes another arm of government.
And that's why my concern,
that should be, it's always being budgeted. So all this particular conference, if Lynn Mingich and Honorable Moses Kuria and the head of state, all those who are going to attend this conference, do not look straight into the camera and tell Kenyans that we agree there has been budgeted corruption. And, Uhuru Kenyatta says, what do you want me to do about this? There's 2 billion we are losing each and every day. But what do I do? We do not want to see a head of state that is resigning into faith, saying that I can also not do anything about it. And this conference...
I wanted to add something there. I wanted to add something there by saying that... do we need to go and spend money for 3 days in Bomas to discuss about what we already know? In fact, if you look at the paper, they've been saying that a centralized payroll system for all public sectors needs to be done. Why don't we just implement it? In my Solomonic Economic, which I have a book here, I'm going to give you, Daniel.
Thank you.
I said, if I was a head of state today, I'll structure all payments under Public Service Commission to avoid duplication of everybody having their payroll wherever they want. It is in this book. And I'm happy that they already know the solution is writing here in the paper in Daily Nation. Maybe someone who wrote this has read my Solomonic Economics. Because look, why are we having, everyone has different payrolls in this country, yet we have Public Service Commission, which will hire everybody. In fact, even the president should be paid from that very payroll. When you centralize, you can see where loopholes are. But if you have what we call different centers of data rather than data center, then those different centers of data don't speak to the data center. And therefore, when the center cannot hold together, then there can be a lot of lies going on. And let me just try to give an example. I disagree with the issue of always saying we should lower people's salaries. Because no one on this table wants their salary to go down. I can tell you.
Sure.
Have you heard people being told that you can go and do what is called home care jobs in Canada, home care jobs in the US? Nurses should go to work in the US, Germany, and the rest. Why are they saying? Because there's higher salaries there, isn't it? So we shall be cheating ourselves by saying, let us lower our salaries here and increase our salaries outside there. We are going to suffer because you don't live in a vacuum. Because Kenya will say, okay, if you lower salaries for doctors, teachers, professors, and the rest, let us go work outside the country, you won't get quality human resource. Why is American economy growing? Because they have attracted people with high-paying jobs, but you must be productive. We should work more on productivity. We should never be austerity measures driven. Because look here, in Scotland, home care job assistant earns 5,000 sterling pounds, isn't it? Will you want to be a home care job worker in Kenya? You'd rather go there. And because of global forces, we are not saying that Kenya we have not fenced Kenya and let us, no one can leave Kenya, we must work in Kenya. Some people will go work in Rwanda, some people will go work in Somalia. Somalia and other countries will start benefiting from the fact that we are thinking austerity. The president should think about how to make economy vibrant. In fact, I'm against the financial, what we call the budget policy statement that says that Kenyan economy will grow by 4.8%. If the economy can grow by double digits, like for example, during Kibaki as economist, during Kibaki, the economy grew by double digit.
That is what
people thought of, people thought of how to go there, because if you're a businessman, Fred, you want people and salary can buy your produce. If their salaries are reduced, how will they buy produce from you? I think this is a joke for me.
And I want us to move on to a different headline now, which is still linked with the issue of salaries and workers' remuneration and all these things. It's the big headline on the front page of the Daily Nation. It has to do with the workers' representation. And workers' unions and trade unions, and we have the image there of Francis Atwoli. And the question is why Atwoli is under siege. The combative veteran trade unionist Francis Atwoli is between a rock and a hard place, with things starting to align against him. From a new push to hold private guards, court deductions, and a bill seeking to end his long career, to criticism over his lukewarm stance on workers' issues from an opposition he dumped after the 2022 election. In 2 weeks' time, we'll be marking Labor Day, at a time when doctors are on strike, at a time when we're having this National Wage Bill conference. Now we're discussing even the workers' representation and the role of unions in representing workers and what workers stand for. And we've seen what KMPDU, or the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union, has done and continues to do so far. We've seen what the Kenya National Union of Nurses continues to do so far, and the other unions representing medical professionals continuing to do. And they've received a lot of applause for their work. Yet we're seeing criticism going towards other unions. We've seen people saying that unions like KNUT and KUPPET have lost their, their sting. KOTU now is coming under criticism over the same. And the role of this central organization of trade union is key when we're discussing issues of wages and issues of workers' remuneration, as well as their conditions of working. What is your assessment of the performance of KOTU in the last 1 year or so, Daniel?
I think one of the issues that I've struggled to understand is this important role the KOTU plays when we have vibrant other trade and industrial representatives that are equally seems to be parallel mandate and initiatives in pushing for workers' welfare and matters that are affecting workers' welfare. Now, I think there's a strict contradiction. One, in the level of representation, in the persona of the Secretary General, and in the quality of what he represents. Prof is always talking about quality, on form of representation. Most of us grew up knowing Atwoli for a long time, and I think his persona and his representation for a long time has been that he is the de facto, spokesperson of all the trade unionists and all the workers' welfare, and by the fact that KOTU has been very central historically and has an institutional memory, as being very vibrant and in supporting workers' welfare and trade unions. But I think, just like you've alluded to, there is this contradiction that comes when all these workers' union really want a strong representation in terms of advocating for their real welfare and their real issues. Because for me, I see these as KOTU. One, I think there needs to be a way to consult with other trade unionists, especially in some of these, for example, bargaining agreements. How do KOTU assist doctors in terms of trying to push for their issues? Because what we've seen is, while the doctors, for example, and other unionists are really pushing for their bargaining agreement, we are seeing a lukewarm reactions from KOTU. Probably because I see it as a political stunt.
KOTU has previously been very vocal.
Yes, it has. But I think
curiously quiet on the doctor's strike.
But I think that is what I'm saying. The representation of KOTU is as well as sometimes the political angling it stands on. You've seen even before this current regime, KOTU was very, before the elections, you could actually see that it was allied to. And the problem of trade unionists allying to different political factions, which I think sometimes you also need to give into perspective, because then it becomes a problem when these industrial trade unions or workers union become so much politically aligned to certain functions. Then I think that also hinders their role when it comes to accountability and representations of their union officials in the face of a government that would want to violate some of these agreements. This is the trajectory where I see now KOTU taking, and it's going to find it very difficult with other unionists to operate in this particular space.
Prof, we are at a very interesting time when doctors are on strike, other medical professionals are on strike. Labor Day is only 2 weeks away. We are having this national wage bill conference, and we are not hearing the voice of probably the biggest trade unionist or the lead defender of the workers, Bwana Francis Atwoli. What happened according to your assessment?
You see, Fred, there are very simple ways to understand this. Very often, it's difficult for trade unionists ever to be in government. Can you imagine opposition inside the government? Because trade unionists tend normally to be advocating. How can someone be inside government advocating for the trade unions? So I'm sure that Atwoli was not very calculative on the moves he made. Immediately, Atwoli crossed over and said he's in support of Kenya Kwanza government, especially after the election. Normally, they can do that before the election, but after the election, they have to go back to their, let's call, normal settings. You have to go to industry setting by realizing that you are advocating for the rights of the workers, and against who? For example, on Labor Day, if you're in government, you will stand and tell people increase minimum wage, and yet you're inside government. So whom are you telling if you're inside government? Can Ruto go and tell people, can government increase trade wage? You know, it's laughable. So the fact that he's inside government, I think the quicker he jumps out of government and go back to default settings to become a trade unionist, the better. Let me give a bit of history here. There's an organization called FKE, Federation of Kenyan Employers. There's one called KEPSA, and there's one called KOTU. Remember before, if you wanted to have a seat in State House for state celebrations, you need to become a member of Federation of Kenyan Employers. But Federation of Kenyan Employers, which works under ILO, which is a global organization, discovered that that was not a nice spot. Mm-hmm. Then there's KEPSA, which is a private sector, whatever you know it, KEPSA. They are now the ones who actually are closer to the president than actually FKE. Remember before...
private sector.
Yes, a private sector alliance. Remember that the KOTU was much more outside this thing, because there's a parallel movement between Federation of Employers, because employers want the employees to earn less salaries and don't fight them much. So FKE should be advocating for the employers, while KOTU should be advocating for the employees. So when time comes now, when the employee advocate is inside government more than the one for employers, because employers should actually be closer to government, then you realize that the tangent has actually moved.
But people would imagine that the closer you are to the powers that be, that probably the benefits would accrue for whoever you represent.
No, actually you might find that people who are outside government benefit more than those inside government. Fred, let me give you a bad example. Do you know that sometimes for some of the men who have mpango wa kandos, the mpango as kandos can benefit more than the wife, you know, but the wife, you are there with your wife, you sleep in the same house. If the wife asks for money, you realize that you tell her there's no money, but mpango wa kando can go and chop that money in a night, 100,000 shillings gone. But at home, even 10,000 shillings hard. So sometimes by being outside, for example, there's an analogy that ODM, which belongs to Raila Odinga, actually seems to be benefiting more than some of the members, because William Ruto cannot ask ODM to disband itself and join UDA, but still benefit, because Raila is being taken to AU by UDA. But in number, Moses Wetangula is under trouble to disband his party. Musalia Mudavadi want to disband their party. So they are actually, if you are closer, being told, don't worry, we are going to eat later. Okay. We are closer. In my culture, they said that the one who does the molding of the pot sometimes can eat in a broken pot. Okay. So according to me, by being closer, you are supposed to even defend mediocrity, isn't it? And you lose value. So Atwoli has become more mediocre by moving towards Kenya Kwanza government, unfortunately, to a government which has the worst performing record.
Do you think he has outlived his usefulness in as far as the trade union job that he has worked for so long is concerned? Because people are now talking about actually capping having term limits for such leaders. He has been there for quite a number of decades.
But you see, Atwoli benefits from his personality. Every Kenyan likes Atwoli personality. Mm-hmm. The only thing is that personality inside the government does not work. Okay. I watched him on one of the shows last week. when he was talking, he's not the Atwoli we know, the vibrant one. He's gone, you know. Like now, can you imagine Raila Odinga inside government now in the glass, because now they're inside the glass with Ruto because they want to go to AU. Can you imagine how that looks like? It's difficult for you to see him. Also remember when Raila Odinga crossed over and did a handshake with Uhuru and was trying to take over, he was also getting, so Atwoli is suffering from what is very clear. Okay. Immediately you look like you are in government, you cannot be an opposition. And
Daniel, do you think this will cost Atwoli the fact that he's now appearing to work more closely with the government? Now people are calling for the capping of term limits for union leadership.
And I think this is setting him up as well. The more it gets closer to the government, is also you're setting up yourself, and Atwoli did so, by equivocally just supporting, getting and mudding himself into the Kenyan politics. I think the existence of trade unionists, and I think what has also been working for Atwoli before, is that his vibrant and sharp push and direct course that he takes in matters of the welfare of the workers. But I think the bill is on the Senate to discuss about his term. I think Senator Eddie Oketch, is the author of the bill and is pushing towards having trade unionists and federations have a term limit for those who are representing those particular trade unions.
And it doesn't always mean bad things when we see leadership changes in unions, because in 2017, when doctors signed their now CBA, the one they're fighting for, the Secretary General of KMPD was none other than Oma Oluga.
Dr. Oma Oluga, yes.
Later, a few years later now, we have someone else.
Dr. Davji Atel.
So, and they're still performing well.
That's what I said. It's quite interesting. One, that there are other union workers that are very clear in their constitution about the term limit. If that constitution exists, it's important for the internal governance. I think he has for 23 years. Probably 23 years is long enough for you to stay into some position. Wherever you stay long into certain position, you just become moribund. There's no creativity, there's no proper representation, there is no performance and delivery. I think it's important that for some time we have this particular act or bill being regularized in this country, that just like other positions, because he's in contest of KOTU being given a term limit, or there are bills that states clearly that federations need to have a term limit.
KOTU can actually revive itself and become...
I think it's important for KOTU to revive himself. There's an evidence that the longer Atwoli has stayed into power, and that by default sometimes, and his associations as well, drifts towards making certain monumental mistakes, as Fred has said. That you find yourself, and this does not mean that is really a bad calculation, always consulting with the government. But at the end of the day, there needs to be a consultation between these trade unionists and the government of the day as well. But I think the moment any trade unions or federation, workers federation, directly, associate with the government and the transitions within government causes a little bit of destabilization. Okay. So I'm for the agreement that it's quite time for Kenyans, and Kenyans have been calling for a long time. Is it KOTU that we cannot have? A change of guard in KOTU. Is it the word stamp that this KOTU is Atwoli and Atwoli is KOTU? I think sometimes we really need to revise and have this bill in Parliament, that there needs to be an internal governance within trade unions that allows election or any other form of government of changing leadership within this representation.
And I know the name Francis Atwoli will be mentioned even more in the coming weeks as we get even closer to Labor Day, which will be marked on the 1st of May, which is exactly 2 weeks from today.
Alfred, I think that there are two things there that we have, there's what you call having clear and distinct thinking. There are two things here. What is causing which one? Is it that the crossing over that has rendered Atwoli irrelevant, that people are saying now we have to start thinking about term limit? Or it is the term limit that it is the lack of term limit that has made him relevant. Because sometimes we might be thinking that it is the fact that he has stayed longer that he has become irrelevant, or that his position has made him relevant. So people are looking at how can we remove him. And I think that the second option is the one which is most likely to be true. Because Atwoli has got a character that any trade unions will want to have. But the point is that he is now using it against them. It has become a weapon against them. Therefore, they are now trying to say, excuse me, it seems now we are looking for how to leave. I'm sure that if you're a husband and that position has no term limit, when you start misbehaving, they'll be looking at the marriage clause, whether there's any exit clause. But if you're performing well as a husband, no one looks at that clause at all. Okay. Even as an anchor, Fred, what I like about you is that every time we come here, there's a new way you're engaging us. And you do your deep research. But when you start coming to this place and take everything for granted, let's say, okay, TV47 has to look at the term limit on how someone can become an anchor. So I'm thinking that the position of Atwoli has rendered him irrelevant, not the term limit. Okay. And I'm sure anybody who, if Atwoli continued to be the vibrant trade unionist, there's a time he used to put pressure on Uhuru Kenyatta. Until every Labor Day, every president was looking forward to increase minimum wage. Moi had the same challenge with him, I'm sure. You could see Kibaki had the same challenge with him. Uhuru had the same challenge with him. Ruto is enjoying. Because I'm sure the last Labor Day celebration, Ruto did not increase minimum wage, and the day ended very well. And I'm sure Uhuru had always increased something, which means that since Ruto took over, the Kenyan employees have never gained from the vibrant Atwoli that we have. I also have to tell you, Atwoli relates very well with the media. In fact, I'm wondering why he's on the front page. Is he paying his bills? Maybe it seems that the person managing his media, let's say media PR, has slept on the job. You know?
The headline on the front page of the Daily Nation reads, "Why Atwoli is under siege. Combative veteran trade unionist Francis Atwoli is between a rock and a hard place," and you can read more on the Daily Nation. As we come to the end of our discussion this morning, it would be unfair not to talk about some politics. This month, we were promised that there would be some serious grassroots elections for both UDA and ODM. So far, we've seen nothing much happening, and we're still waiting. Probably towards the end of the month, something will happen. But there's been a lot of talk, especially within UDA, of what this election would mean. The fact that ANC, the party led by, or formerly led by the now Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, is looking forward to joining the UDA and what that would portend. The fact that Speaker Moses Wetangula and his Ford Kenya party are still reluctant to do the same, and issues of concern from the Mount Kenya region on the provision in the UDA constitution for 3 deputy party leaders and what that would mean for Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. So yesterday, these 2 leaders, Moses Wetangula and the Deputy President, had a meeting to discuss other issues, of course. But then some people are reading a bit deeper into this meeting, and one political analyst says Gachagua and Wetangula could be united by fear, informed by the very person who should be cautious to disorient 2022 political arithmetic. I do not know exactly who's that, but I want to get your feeling about this. Daniel, we'll start with you as we come to the end of this conversation, as you make your final comments.
I think for a long time, there is a push to clamp down on and put together the political parties that were under the umbrella of Kenya Kwanza. And there's been a lot of doublespeak in public, while the General Secretary of UDA, Cleopa Malala, has been very clear that approaching the next election needs to be done on a united force. And that all political parties under Kenya Kwanza should, for him, he uses the word must and should, close down or just unwind and form one political party. And which means that they would join UDA. Not that they are going to rebrand to another political party. That all these political parties that are registered in the office of the political parties needs to unfold and join UDA. Quite interesting, because you are looking at the operations of a political party with different offices in different counties. leaving their county coordinators, their constituency coordinators, and telling them, you fold the camp and join UDA. Now, there's a lot of issues here because one, it is coming on a background where central Kenya, there's been an issue that there's a popping up of young, vibrant candidates to destabilize the political, status quo in central Kenya, and the issues about kingpin. That Honorable Rigathi Gachagua is seen as the senior-most person politically in central Kenya. And so he's under siege because even as much as the president quelled the rebellion that was brewing in Mount Kenya, Ndindi Nyoros and the rest, who even received the support far and wide from Rift Valley, to be the next possible successor or deputy president. Honorable Moses Wetangula is also going through an issues of Tawe movement. You understand the Tawe movement that is arising in Trans Nzoia and in other areas. So all these, and there is nothing that happens in politics coincidentally. Why is it this meeting happening in the background of all this? Professor is clear that he's given a very elaborate explanation.
Brought together by fear.
That one, UDA is piling pressure that these political parties needs to unfold.
Okay.
ANC has accepted. Fort Kenya needs to unfold if it's still in Kenya Kwanza.
Is it even fair?
Politically, because you're asking us politically as to whether is on what is provided in the Political Parties Act or what is within the law. That is another issue. We are talking about what is then is politically relevant as we move by.
Okay.
Yeah. According to me, the best way to understand this is to understand what happened before Kenya Kwanza took power and what happened after, especially the position of Wetangula and Rigathi Gachagua. Now, one thing which is common among them, commonalities, is that Gachagua was seen as the point man of William Ruto in Mount Kenya, and Moses Wetangula was seen as the point man for William Ruto in Western Kenya. Now, they are not the preferred point men. It means William Ruto wants to create a new point men or point persons in these regions. And that's why they are the same. They have the same commonalities before the election and after the election. It looks like the president is saying, maybe Rigathi Gachagua has not been my preferred point person after the election. He has outlived his relevance. Remember that the main reason why William Ruto stuck with Rigathi Gachagua is because of his money. Because William Ruto needed money to ascend to power. He does not need that money anymore. And he has ensured that Rigathi Gachagua, even if his deputy president has no access how to make money in government. I have this evidence, I can tell you for sure. Because in the previous regime where William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta were in a regime, Uhuru Kenyatta must have allowed William Ruto to make some money. And William Ruto knows how dangerous that was because he used that missile against Uhuru Kenyatta. And he has ensured that Rigathi Gachagua has no access to the coffers. Remember, William Ruto controlled Treasury under Rotich. He controlled Parliament because Justin Muturi, his friend, was in charge of Parliament. He controlled the Senate. You see, that's where Adan Duale was. So actually, he was running government. What ministry does Rigathi Gachagua control? First of all, he has no ministry. And secondly, he cannot control any minister in government. William Ruto controls all of them. So he has been able to ensure that this guy cannot make money. So he's not enjoying his deputy presidency. You can tell when he sees him walking, how he talks, he doesn't seem to enjoy it. And then his main job in UDA is over. Why? He used to be insulting Raila. Now Raila is with William Ruto. So what does he do? On the other side,
wrap it up in about 20
yes, on the other side also, William Ruto is finding that he can be able to have a new revolution in Western Kenya, and where Moses Wetangula being very stubborn, he can actually get people to finish up. So these guys are coming together to tell William Ruto, we still have some mantle. So it's not fear.
Okay.
It's by showing them, excuse me, we can still, yes, it's actually this is being bold. I don't see it to being fear. It's being bold by saying, look, we are still inside government, but remember, we have some power to pull through you, so think about it.
Thank you so much, Professor Fred Ogola, economic and governance expert, and Daniel Orogo, political analyst. Our panelists this morning on State of the Nation right here on Morning Cafe TV 47. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time this morning. Now, as we prepare to celebrate Labor Day in 2 weeks' time, it is important to think about how crucial trade unions have historically been for protecting workers' rights. At a time when doctors and other healthcare professionals are on strike, there's no better time than this to evaluate the role of unions. Recent events show that some unions may not be as effective at standing up for their members as before. The Central Organization of Trade Unions, GOtv, for example, has faced criticism from the Private Security Regulatory Authority for neglecting its responsibilities towards private security guards. The PSRA has directed employers to cease deducting and remitting trade union fees and contributions for security guards. Now, according to the CEO, Fazul Mohammed, GOtv has fallen short in fulfilling its duties in advocating for the rights, ensuring minimum wage compliance, and promoting the welfare of its members. This is despite security guards making financial contributions through monthly trade union dues amounting to billions of shillings. GOtv is accused of failing to advocate effectively on their behalf. It is obvious this is not just an isolated issue, but a sign of deeper problems in labor relations across Kenya. Unions that were once active and outspoken are now perceived to be silent when their members face difficulties. As we get ready to mark Labor Day, we take this opportunity to remind the unions of the need to step up